And we're back with another episode of Great Lake State Football, episode 13, coming at you as the best podcast in the state of Michigan, talking every level of football. I'm Vince.
Kory.
I'm Brett. It's great to have you back this week, Vince.
I was wondering if one of you were going to say something. Yeah, I'm back. I wasn't on last week. I went to the Michigan State basketball game, my first one in over 3 years, and they got beat, played like shit. So unlike what these guys try to tell you that I was at the movies, that was not the case. So
movies.
I am back here to talk football with these two goofballs, and we are going to kick things off with MHSAA. We will be having a guest on a little bit later here to talk a few different levels of football, high school, college, coaching, and things like that with CJ Mifsud. But that will be a little bit later in the episode. Before we get to that, we will kick things off with high school and get into some college and NFL for a little bit here. So the first thing we want to mention with MHSAA, we did put out on social media this past week a graphic, kind of continuing a few graphics we put out just over a week ago. Brett spent a lot of time putting together the rankings for all college football programs in the state of Michigan since 2010 by win percentage, kind of given some relevant data there within the last decade to see who's had the most success in the last 10 plus years. And then we decided to start doing this by region in the state with high schools. With us being from the Lansing area, we kicked it off with the greater Lansing mid-Michigan region. And the list wasn't, I don't know about you guys, I didn't really think it was surprising. The list was headed off by Ithaca. Ithaca has a 0.92 or 92% winning percentage since 2010, 138-12 in that span. Not quite as many wins recently, most of it coming at the beginning of the 2010s. Puam Westphalia, number 2, 135-18, 0.882 win percentage. 88%. DeWitt, close third at almost 86%, 128-21. The top 5 is rounded out with Lansing Catholic at 83.2% and Portland at an even 80. All 5 of those programs have over 100 wins since 2010. The number 6 is at 93 wins. Any thoughts on this list here of our top high school teams since 2010 in the Lansing area?
Pretty insightful. I actually laughed because I remember Ithaca, would they win 92 straight at one point?
They won, yeah, it was like, 4 or 5 straight state titles, undefeated seasons. Yeah, they were close. I don't know if it's still at one time the national record. We talked about this on the podcast recently. The national record at one time was held by Hudson back in the 70s. I don't know if they have it anymore. It's still the state record. The state record is definitely still Hudson. They almost caught Hudson. They just missed Hudson's win streak, which is like 70 something. It's a crazy win streak.
I think it was a really interesting list. I probably could have guessed 12 of those teams, I would say personally. Some interesting things that I found where I was surprised Holt wasn't on the list. That was a surprise to me. And also St. John's. St. John's seems to have a pretty steady program. They hover around 500 about every year. And Morris, who's at the bottom of the list, has 61 winning percentage. So I'm sure St. John's is probably number 16 or number 17, but those are some of the initial thoughts that I had. But like Kory mentioned, I'm not surprised to see Ithaca number 1 or Puamo number 2 or DeWitt number 3. I mean, those are all pretty much givens.
The top 5 are not really surprising, I don't think, if you pay attention to the area of football. Brett, you are a smart guy, man. Number 16, because I have the list right here in front of me. St. John's was number 16. They just missed the list at 58.5%. So they were just shy of that 60% threshold. It's funny that you mentioned Holt. Holt had a ton of success in the 90s and early 2000s. Unfortunately, since 2010, they just barely reached 500. Overall, they were 59-54 since 2010 at 52.2%. So they weren't quite, they I think would have been number 20 had we continued the list. So Anyone have a guess at 17, 18, or 19 after St. John's?
I do not, but just real quick to chime in. If Ithaca doesn't lose that state championship in 2014, the following year they go 14-0, and then the year after that they go 13-1 again, and the year after that they go 13-1 again. They would have had like 100 in like a 3-year stretch. I think they were. I mean, I'm not going to do the math that quickly, but I think they were like 105-1 in like a 7-year stretch, or 105-3. Sorry, which is nuts.
That is nuts.
It is absolutely insane the stretch of success they had. That's for sure.
To answer your question, Vince, I'm going to rattle off 2 schools off the top of my head. I would have to say Charlotte.
No.
And Hazlitt.
Hazlitt's 19, 53.5%. Charlotte, I don't think quite, because I there was a few that I crossed off pretty early because they weren't quite hitting 50 wins. So I knew if they weren't hitting over 50 wins, they weren't going to meet their threshold. I don't think they met 50 wins since 2010. Charlotte was another program that had more success, went to a state title in 2004, 2005, something like that, in the early 2000s. 17 is Langsburg, which I thought was really surprising. They were 57.9%. Dansville, number 18, over Hazlitt at 56.4%.
Yeah,
so those were the next programs to kind of round out the top 20 there. So we put out a voting tweet on Twitter. I don't know what you call it, a poll. Put out a poll on Twitter for people to vote on the next region. We suggested, I did not put Detroit on there because Detroit I was going to save for later. That's going to take forever to do Detroit. And we are going to have to spend some time discussing how we want to do it. But right now we put out for Grand Rapids, the Upper Peninsula, the Jackson South Central area of Michigan, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, Southwest area, and Grand Rapids is winning by quite a bit right now. So likely our next region that we will talk about or put out this list for would be the Grand Rapids area. We are working to kind of narrow down which schools qualify as the Grand Rapids area, and we are kind of cutting it off at Muskegon and Holland. Muskegon and Holland areas will be included in Grand Rapids. And so right now I'm trying to finish up the list. We're at about 70 schools. The Lansing area was almost 50, if that gets you an idea of how many more that we got to sort through here for the Grand Rapids area. So there's a little bit more work to do to figure out this list of win percentage since 2010 for the Grand Rapids area.
And I do want to add to our plan is to put a map out as well, so you can see a physical image of what is considered the GR, Lansing, etc. area.
We're excited to do it.
I did the math really quick on Ithaca. From 10 to 17, 107-3.
That's 107-3 in just that stretch alone. So they've had 9 losses in 5 years. They've had nearly 2 losses a year in the last 5 years here. So that's definitely brought them down a little bit, but it's crazy that it's just unparalleled success, almost 10 years of just unbelievable success. Well, what's crazy is if you go back to 2009, the year before they won that first state title in 2010, I think they went to the semifinals. Weren't they like 12-1 that year or something?
12-2 that year. They were or 11-2, sorry. With 09 included, they were 118-5. So
unbelievable.
I couldn't even imagine.
It's an insane level of success.
And the thing is, earlier in there, I think they had 2 or 3 straight quarterbacks that were 3- and 4-year starters. They had like Alex Nisnak, Travis.
Who was a stud. They had some studs.
Travis Smith, who went to Wake Forest and then Toledo. And then I think they had a kid that went to Harvard. And then I think they had a Hesbrook, maybe.
Hesbrook's there now. Oh, just finished up.
Okay. But yeah, they had quite the run. And now they're getting a new field.
Yep, we talked about that a couple episodes ago. Next little bit of MHSAA news. So to kind of wrap that up, stay tuned for our next region. Should be out hopefully maybe in a week or 2 here. Next bit of MHSAA news. A big time small school face-off was just announced today, right? a non-conference matchup between Division 8 Hudson, who was just in the D8 state championship and won. Is coming off a 14-0 season, being Beale City 14-7 in the state title. We'll be playing Constantine, Division 6 powerhouse, week 2 this fall. Constantine, while they've continued to have success in the past 10 years, their last 8 years have not nearly been as successful as the previous 12 to 15 were. From 1994 until 2012, they went to 4 or 5 state titles. And in that time, they had a dozen 10 plus win seasons. They just had a 10-win season this year for the first time since 2012. They've been still going to the playoffs, still winning 6, 7, or 8 games, but the success has not been quite as high as what it was in the early 2000s and 90s. But big time non-conference matchup for small schools, that's for sure. And then a little fact here that we have in our notes is Hudson has made 5 state finals appearance, winning 2. Constantine has made 5 appearances as well, and they have won 1. So quite a bit of success between those 2 programs. Next little tidbit. Oh, Brett, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I wanted to add, we talked about playoff points pretty much every episode, just about. And in this game, Constantine would not really get much playoff points playing a team 2 divisions lower. So it seems to be a very low upside type game for them.
Yeah. We've talked about it. That essentially, if you are playing down, it doesn't really help you. The multipliers are split up by 4 classes. So they do class A, B, C, D for the multipliers. So to play like D1, D2, it's fine, or 3, 4, or 5, 6. But playing down, like if they're a Division 6 playing down to 8, yeah, it's going to kind of hurt you unless they're feeling that confident.
It's a program on the rise, though, so they're probably hunting to find some good competition to play. And why not play a state champion caliber team who's there year in and year out? So I think it's a good test.
Find out who you are quick.
Yep.
Next little bit of MHSAA news here is another non-conference matchup, a really high-profile Division I matchup of a couple teams that have been in state championships recent years and had quite a bit of success, and that is between Clarkston and Davison. We'll actually be playing at the Big House, which has been a showcase. Was last year the first year they did those showcase games at the Big House, or they've done that for a few years now?
Done for a few years now.
Okay. So Davison and Clarkston did open up last season as well. Clarkston beat Davison 29-26. I don't know if that game was at the Big House. If that's kind of the big news here, is this being moved to the Big House. So I'm assuming, I'm not quite sure if this was a home and away series or how that works when they're doing a game like this, especially if they played each other last year. I'm not sure if that game was home or away last year, but Davison recently won the state championship in 2019, went back in 2020 and lost. And then Clarkston's last state title appearance was 2018, where they got beat by 1 point by Chippewa Valley. And they won the state title actually the year before in 2017 in one of the weirdest scoring state title games ever, 3-2 over West Bloomfield. So yeah, a lot of success between these 2 programs in Division I. Clarkston may be one of the most consistent Division I programs over the last 20 plus years. Has like 1 missed playoff appearance since 2002. So pretty successful program there, as well as Davison. Next little bit of news here in going step by step here with Clarkston football. Their head coach, speaking of success, they had a head coach there for 35 years. Kurt Richardson won 3 state titles, and after 35 years, he is stepping down. So you're talking about a lot of consistent success there. It helps when you have a coach who has been there, since I guess 35 years would be since 1986, 87.
Longer than we've all been alive.
Correct. Older than all of us there. So that guy's basically, was the guy who put this program on the map, built their success. So wishing him the best of luck. I'm assuming he's retiring if he's stepping down after 35 years, unless some crazy opportunity came up. But I would imagine after 35 years, he's probably, gonna relax and spend time with family. Last little bit of high school news here. Kind of crazy news. Crazy. If you've been paying attention to Michigan high school football lately, there's been a lot of high profile coaches, especially in the Detroit area, getting hired by college programs. It happened most recently with West Bloomfield's coach, I believe, last year.
Yeah, Ron Bellamy.
Yep, was hired by Michigan. The latest head coach to be hired by a Detroit area school, or to be latest Detroit area head coach to be hired by a college, Kory Parker, who basically built the River Rouge program from nothing. Kind of a crazy thing about River Rouge that I was looking at today is River Rouge we were talking with our guest already before this episode started, but it's going to show up later in this episode. We were just talking about enrollment growing for high schools. River Rouge, when Kory Parker showed up, was a Class C school who barely had 400 kids. River Rouge in 2021 is now Class A and has over 1,000 students. So in the 12, 13 years he has been there, they have grown by more than 600 students. So that is crazy. And in that time, Kory Parker has gone to 3 state championships and won 1. So very impressive season, very impressive tenure he has had here, has had in Michigan at the School of River Rouge, pretty much building this program from nothing. Before he showed up, they only had 4 other playoff appearances in school history, never making it past the districts. So for him to show up and basically build this program from the ground up, a program that before he got there also had 5 straight losing seasons. So very impressive career. He is going to be going to Toledo, University of Toledo, to be their quarterback's coach. So wishing Kory Parker all the best of luck. I had the fortune of watching this guy speak back in February or January of 2020 at the coaches clinic before COVID hit. And he had just won the state championship a few months before. His clinic was packed. His speech, he had one of the bigger conference rooms. There was not an open seat in there. And he talked about his defense, and it was a very interesting speech that he gave, and a lot of really great advice on coaching defense in high school football. Moving on from MHSAA.
No. Hold on. I do want to add something else. You talked about Ron Bellamy going to Michigan. Thomas Wilcher went to Michigan State from Detroit Cass Tech as well last June. So this is now the 3rd coach within the last 10 months that's bumped from high school to Division I college football. Pretty cool.
I'd be curious to know, we've talked, not to kind of prolong our MHSAA conversation too much longer, but I'd be curious to know how many high profile coaches in the state of Michigan get offers that maybe they just they turn down, because a cornerbacks coach at a MAC school, while an awesome opportunity, can't be that prestigious in terms of like money and opportunity.
Paying you probably $50,000.
Well, I will say this. I don't know
the next level too.
But I will say this. I don't know if you guys know this. Kory Parker's wife is a doctor. I found that out today reading an article about him. So with his wife being a doctor, a lot of job security there. So, for their family. So, maybe you can take kind of an opportunity that, is a little bit riskier in terms of financial stability when you have, that kind of support. So very interesting.
Not only that, but Toledo is also probably about an hour drive from River Rouge. It's really close. River Rouge is South Detroit's downriver area.
Yeah. So depending on where his wife lives, maybe they move a little closer to Toledo, a halfway point. And then you're talking like maybe they're driving, if she's working in Detroit, 30-minute commute. So not a bad situation for him, and, wishing him the best of luck at Toledo. Division III football news here, moving into the college ranks. Division III news out of the state of Michigan, talking MIAA. Couple short tidbits. Hope College, who has had a lot of success. We did our rankings of college programs, and Hope since 2010 actually tops the D3 list at 63%, winning 70 games since 2010. And part of that is to this man who has just announced his retirement, Mike Ricketts, the defensive coordinator of 23 years for Hope College, has announced that he will be stepping down. A lot of people were sharing on Twitter, what this guy has meant to the program and to players. And Brett and I just talked about it a little bit ago that we were heavily recruited by this guy. We did a visit at campus. Hope was a place that, seemed like a really great place to be. Ultimately, not a place we ended up deciding to go, but Mike Ricketts was our area recruiter. So we got to, talk with Mike Ricketts quite a bit over the course of our last couple of years of high school.
He's a football guy. He was there for 23 years. His son, Nathan Ricketts, also played linebacker at Central. And little factoid on the Rickett family, his son, Nathan Rickett, now works for a NASCAR pit crew. Pretty cool career path for him. Actually, if you can look it up online. It's a pretty neat article that describes what it's like to be in the pit crew. Sounds awesome.
Where's the loyalty, though? How does he not go to Hope? Why go to Central? Jesus Christ.
Maybe his dad wasn't writing him personal letters. No, Mike Ricketts was a great guy, though. I remember he was one of the main reasons probably one of the only reasons I would have ever considered Hope is because he was just such a good guy. Very nice. And shows he was there for 23 years.
Yeah, and pulling up an article just to kind of wrap up talking about him really quick. He started coaching football in 1988 as a GA at Eastern Illinois, and he became a member of Hope's coaching staff, actually 94 to 1998 as well, before coming back to Hope in 2003. The article that Hope put out doesn't quite detail what he did in some of those time periods in between. But one last little cool thing about him, he won 3 national championships at Augustana in Illinois in the mid 80s, where they won 60 straight games. And he was an all-American linebacker. So pretty crazy, that guy's career in Division III football and playing and coaching. So very cool.
Football guy.
Yeah, football guy for sure. And then the last little bit of information here with Hope College is they announced the replacement is James Ross, who is a former Michigan linebacker. And apparently he has been working under Mike Ricketts for 5 years now. So he's already in the Hope College program, but pretty crazy, man, that they're getting, a University of Michigan grad.
He was there for 5 years already.
Yeah. I thought that's what I just read in the article that Hope put out.
That's crazy.
No, I think he's been coaching for 5 years. He was a GA for Michigan just a couple of years ago.
Oh, no, sorry. Excuse me. The article, I misread that. The article is mentioning someone else, another member of the staff who worked under Ricketts for the last 5 years. So this is going to be James Ross's first year there, I believe, right?
Well, second year upcoming.
Or second year there, yes. So pretty cool. Be interesting to see where Hope goes under the new direction, new defensive coordinator, especially one who has Big Ten experience.
2 things. It'll be interesting to see, number one, how long he stays there, because he's just he's a household name in the state of Michigan. And number 2, if you're a 17-year-old and an ex-Michigan linebacker and NFL player come to your house and wants you to come play football for him, it would be very hard to say no, especially considering the other coaches probably don't have that sort of history.
Did you see his picture that they posted, though? He's still jacked. He didn't even have a neck. He's got to have a 22-inch neck in the fucking suit that he's wearing.
I did see that. It is massive.
Yeah, very cool, though. Obviously, wishing the best of luck to them and, future endeavors and see what kind of happens going forward.
Go Dutch.
Go Dutch. All right. Kind of moving on to our last little tidbit here of D3 news. We have the Alma Scott
Nation.
Alma Scott College. These guys are idiots. Alma College football was named the D3 statistical champion. And anyone who doesn't know what this means, when I was at Hillsdale, I was kind of aware of some of these things because it happened to us. We didn't really, I don't think we really announced it, but we joke with these guys, but penalties and penalty yardage. Essentially at the end of a season, once stats have all been finalized and official, they name statistical champions. Typically the ones that are more significant are like individuals, like a quarterback leading the nation, being the statistical leader for a season in passing yards. But obviously, there's teams who can lead in statistical categories as well. And Alma actually led the nation in turnover margin. They led the nation at 2.2 per game in terms of their turnover margin. They had 18 lost turnovers, and they forced – I'm looking at this wrong. I'm trying to do the math here. Oh, excuse me. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to do math. I'm doing a bad job here. They forced, this is confusing looking at it on the website. They forced 40 turnovers. They only lost 18. So they had a margin of 22 turnovers, which with 10 games was 2.2 per game. So pretty cool.
I think it's really funny that here we are in the middle of February. It took them 3 months after the season ended to come out with that stat.
Needed something to put out on Twitter, on social media in the dead weeks.
What was their record?
They had a winning record, right? Because didn't we talk about this before? Every MIAA team had a winning record except for Kalamazoo. So I think they were 5-5 or 6-4, maybe 6-4.
How do you go 5-5 and 6-4 with a +2 turnover margin? That means you had almost 2.5 more possessions than each team you played and still lost.
That's a good point.
They were 5-5. I just pulled it up. They were 5-5.
Their OC should be fired, which I'm pretty sure is Aritma is the head coach.
They started this.
OC.
Kory, you'll like this. They started the season 5-1. They lost 4 straight games to end the year.
Yeah, when they got in the MIAA, what did they do the first 5 games?
Their first 4 games were all non-conference wins.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on here, going to talk Division II football very briefly. 2 just quick topics before we get to FBS. Kind of cool coming out of the GLIAC here. A former Northern Michigan football player, Nick Baumgartner, is a gold Olympic medalist. He won gold in the mixed team snowboard cross.
I didn't realize he played football for Northern.
Yep, Northern.
That's well before our time.
Michigan football.
Wow, that's awesome.
He's like 40-something years old, so his time at Northern Michigan would have been in the early
90s.
No, it would have been
90s.
early 2000s. Would have been early 2000s. 20 years ago when he was 20, 21, early 2000s. Maybe he probably got to campus, I don't know, 98 or 99 when he first got there, But yeah, pretty cool. Northern Michigan football, obviously doesn't get, unfortunately, talked about a lot. They tend to be near the bottom of the GLIAC, if not the bottom every year. We talked about it. Kory and Brett last week talking about recruiting for the GLIAC, that Northern Michigan, unfortunately, with their location up in Marquette, kind of tends to struggle to get, some of the bigger recruits and gets overshadowed in the Big Ten. But pretty cool to see this kind of news come out. So last little tidbit here for D2 is Wayne State hiring a new secondary coach, Antoine Robinson. Kory, did you say that you believed he was at Northwood at one point as well? I was struggling to find where he was coaching right before he was hired here at Wayne State.
Yeah, so Antoine Robinson played at Wayne State, GA'd at Wayne State, coached at Northwood. Then he coached somewhere else in between. I'm kind of pissed that I didn't click on the link when I saw it earlier, but now he is back at Wayne State.
I think we kind of see that quite a bit too, where you see some of these guys. We talked about a couple weeks ago with Mikey, how Northwood just lost a wide receivers coach to Saginaw Valley, but he was a Saginaw Valley alum. So You see this a lot in the GLIAC. If guys, are GLIAC grads, they come back to their roots, GA at those schools or coach at those schools too. So which is pretty cool. It kind of shows the love for the GLIAC and how passionate people are about those schools. But moving into FBS here, Kory, you want to take us away kind of talking about some combine topics?
Yeah, so the NFL Combine is on the horizon. Super fun to watch. If you have not ever deep dove on a Thursday watching running backs do their 40-yard dashes or the linemen doing their ridiculous drills that they do, the bench press. They also run the 40s. We also had the opportunity to see some grown man's junk fall out of his trousers a couple of years ago at the combine. So always live at the NFL combine.
Ooh.
But just a couple names from our mid-major schools. So Central Michigan's got a pair of offensive linemen actually that were invited to the combine. Bernhard Raymond, their left tackle. He was born in Austria. Brett gave me some knowledge that he actually didn't start playing football until his junior year of high school. And everything I read on him, he's a freak athlete, 6'7", 305. They said he's more athletic than power, which is kind of crazy to think about at that size. And then Luke Gedeke, I'm going to fuck that up.
Oh, you got it. Gedeke, you good.
Gedeke, perfect. Also invited to the NFL Combine. He actually started his career at UW-Stevens Point as a tight end. Based on what I read, he actually almost quit football. He took a year or half a year after he redshirted as a freshman away, and then transferred to Central in 2018, redshirted, played a year, redshirted in 20, and then played this year. He's technically a junior, and he's leaving, so technically an early leave. Western Michigan had a pair of guys, quarterback Caleb Ellaby, which Vincent and I got to see play down in Detroit. Or no, he didn't play in Detroit. No, he did play. He did. Sorry. Yeah, Caleb Ellaby did play for Western down at the bowl game in Detroit. We got to see him, very talented arm. And then wide receiver Sky Moore was also invited out of Western. Eastern Michigan had nobody invited, but their field is still gray. Sorry.
It actually might be kind of white. It might be white right now.
It might be white. No, it's supposed to be 40 tomorrow. University of Michigan had a ton of invites. Vincent Gray, Hassan Haskins, Dax Hill, Chris Hinton, Aiden Hutchinson, who is a state of Michigan guy, David Ajabo, Josh Ross, and Andrew Stuber of the O-line. And then MSU had 3 invites to the combine: Connor Hayward, Jalen Naylor, and Kenneth Walker III. Some other news: MSU is going to open their season versus Western Michigan, and that moved to Friday night instead of Saturday night, so we can party hardy for that one. So.
I will say that Vincent Gray and Josh Ross also state of Michigan folks. Josh Ross being the younger brother of the aforementioned James Ross, the DC of Hope College.
Nice.
If he doesn't make it to the league, do you think he winds up at Hope College?
I think he's gonna have. I think he's gonna have a nice career in the NFL. While James was good, Josh is a little bit more skilled athletically.
I agree.
Well, all right. Moving on to kind of our final topic here to wrap things up before we get to our guest. We have the Super Bowl. Just happened this last weekend. We talked several weeks ago, more than one episode, about how great the playoff games were. We had, 4 great weekends of playoff games. The opening weekend was probably only 2 good games. I think there was 6 games in the opening weekend, and 4 of those were not really close. 2 of them were close. Every playoff game after that, including the Super Bowl, was decided by like a score or less, most of them being decided by 3 points, including the Super Bowl. All good games, a lot of fun to watch. And I think it's worth mentioning Matt Stafford, obviously former Detroit Lion, 1 year removed from the Lions, wins the Super Bowl, leads the team on another game-winning drive, something that Matty Stafford is known for doing. Pretty cool. Us as Detroit Lion fans, we wish nothing but the best for Matt Stafford. So that was pretty cool to see. Hoping we can find that same success someday here in Detroit. But for the meantime, very happy for him, obviously.
It was almost like a 1-year anniversary from him leaving Detroit, too. It was only like a week or so off.
I know. Yeah, when he won the NFC Championship, that was the exact day that he had left the Lions a year previously.
Yeah.
That's just like crazy. So
what was your guys' thoughts? I mean, I thought it was a good game. The Rams' offensive plan was kind of wonky to me. Like, they didn't really attack downfield at all, which was super odd. Like, you've attacked downfield all year. Granted, OBJ got hurt in the second quarter, so that did not help. But I also didn't realize Cincy's defense was that stingy, so that was interesting to see.
The Super Bowl for me was pretty much what the Super Bowl has been the last probably at least 10 years. I don't really get to watch any of the game. I don't know. I find myself just so indulged in the food, the the fellowship amongst people and the beverages. And I look up and next thing I know, it's the third quarter. My wife and I went to our neighbor's house. Our neighbor had some people over and I was going to watch it at home, but we hadn't met all of our neighbors yet. So it was good to go over there. And so I was just talking the entire first half. And then the closest I paid attention to the TV during that time was the halftime show, which I thought was awesome.
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But then came home and put our daughter down for the third quarter. And I did watch the fourth quarter.
I watched the fourth quarter very close. I would agree with you. And you mentioned earlier, well, not earlier in this episode. We talked earlier, and it will be later in the episode. You mentioned how I have two kids, and it was kind of hard wrangling two kids during the Super Bowl. But once they were in bed, I watched the fourth quarter pretty closely. And I mean, I think the Rams just have a dominant defense. I think that's the one thing I noticed through all of the playoff games. This is probably the closest I've ever watched at the NFL playoffs. I mean, I watched pretty much every single game, and a lot of them, especially after the first round, like very diligently. And that's just one thing that stuck out to me is the Rams defense is just so good. That defensive line led by Von Miller and Aaron Donald, some very talented players. You can't win championships without defense. I mean, it's nearly impossible to win championships if you don't have a good defense. And to anyone, and I see it all over the internet right now, to any armchair quarterback who has never played a down of football in their life, certainly never played college or NFL football, who is saying that Matt Stafford only won a Super Bowl because of the defense. Yeah, no shit. You could do that for any Super Bowl winning team.
Peyton Manning did it.
Yeah. You can sit there and name any great quarterback who has ever won a championship. Tom Brady is a hell of a quarterback, but guess what? He won those Super Bowls because he had a great team around him.
Eli Manning.
Football's a team sport, though.
He's got two.
Yeah, football's a team sport. Like, you got to have great players around you. It's not one player. It's not just one guy winning those Super Bowls.
He did not have a good game. I mean, he threw two picks. One was probably his fault.
He didn't have a bad game. He didn't have a great game, but he didn't have a bad game. I mean, he played really well in the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter, he played very well.
2 picks is par for the course for Stafford, though. I mean, he needs to get those 2 picks.
One of those picks was a tip ball. One was a tip ball, wasn't his fault. The other pick was a 50-50 ball where I thought the wide receiver gave up on the play in the end zone. It was a deep ball. It was also the play where an inactive Cincinnati Bengals player ran off the bench in flip-flops and sweats and got a 15-yard penalty for celebrating with the team for an interception in the end zone, which was hilarious.
What a jackass.
That was hilarious.
Come on, man.
I was listening to part of my take this morning. They're like, how did they call that penalty? Was it just like, and there's a taunting penalty by a guy in the gray sweatshirt because he doesn't have a number or anything?
Number gray sweatsuit. Yeah, like what are you going to call it?
They identified him by his flip-flops. There was a man with flip-flops on the field, 15-yard penalty on Cincinnati.
I think they just called it on their bench, didn't they? I don't think they said a number.
Yeah,
I just think they said 15-yard penalty on the bench. One last thing I want to mention here, unless you guys have anything else to add with NFL. Is this the first time ever that an NFL team's played 21 games in a season, because they had 17 regular season games, and then both these teams had to play all 4 rounds of the playoffs. 21 total games. Isn't that crazy? That's a lot of football. On top of 3 preseason games, 2 bye weeks in there, 1 bye week, whatever it is. I mean, it's like long season, man. 1 bye week, long season, a lot of football. Could
you imagine playing 21 games is double a college season?
Just about. Yeah. I mean, like, you think we just talked about Alma football. They played 10 games.
Alma.
Can you say that again?
Alma. Should I say it with Spanish accent? Alma. 21 games. Yeah, that's a lot of football, man. A lot of football. All right. You guys have anything else you want to add with NFL? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up with my fact of the week, because it's an NFL fact.
Can't wait for the draft.
We're having a draft party. Great Lakes State football draft party. Be there, be square.
Yeah, we've been talking about trying to do some episodes live at some point, so that might be one of them. Maybe we'll see how it works out. I don't know. So we've been doing this now. Is this the third week? Third week of Fact of the Week or fourth week? How many weeks been doing this?
Have
you guys both just done one?
This is the third week. We've each done one.
So Brett and Kory have both given Facts of the Week. So now it's my turn to do a Fact of the Week, and mine is NFL related. So that's why we're going to stick it into this portion of the podcast. My Fact of the Week: Cooper Kupp was named the NFL Super Bowl MVP. He is a graduate of Eastern Washington University, which is an FCS school. How many of the 48, so there have been 56 Super Bowl games, but there have been 48 MVPs because Tom Brady has won 5 times. Eli Manning, was it Eli won 3 times? I think it was Eli won 3 times.
Eli won twice.
There were 3. Joe Montana 3 times. Joe Montana was 3 times, I think. There was one player who won 3 times, and there was 3 players who won twice. And then one year there was co-MVPs. There was 2 D linemen who won it for the Cowboys back in the day. I can't remember which Super Bowl number it was. Of the 48 different Super Bowl MVP winners, how many of them have been from a non-FBS school? Cooper Kupp is one of them. How many of them have been from a non-FBS college football program?
I'm going to say 5 because I know that there's been a string of quarterbacks from like weird, what's that? Where'd Jimmy G go? Eastern
Illinois.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Eastern Illinois, maybe it's Southern Illinois. I think Romo's from Southern Illinois, but nonetheless,
I'm going to say 5.
Cowboys can't make it to the Super Bowl. I'm gonna say 4, but I also want to ask you a follow-up question. Vince, is there any in the last 20 years? Because if there is, I'm gonna guess it.
So there is one discrepancy with this because I want to mention this. There are 7 Super Bowl Jeez, I can't talk. There are 7 Super Bowl MVPs all time who their entire college career was at a non-FBS school. There are 3 who transferred from or to an FCS or FBS school. So I don't know if you guys want to take a stab. Brett, it sounds like you were going to take a stab at one recent one. 3 or 4 of the ones in the 21st century, one being Cooper Kupp, the other 3 were transfers, or 2 of them were transfers, excuse me.
Did Tyreek Hill win the MVP?
No.
Pat
Mahomes did.
Yeah, Pat Mahomes is from Texas Tech.
So do you want to try and guess? Or do you want me to just
can you just give me like a range of years? Like, is it in the last 20 years? Like since 2000?
Last 10 years, there was a quarterback who finished his career in an FCS school.
Yes, and it's at one of those weird schools.
It was a very weird FCS school.
Yes. Oh.
He was a very good quarterback. I think he only won 1 Super Bowl. He's still in the league. I'm pretty sure he's a backup now. I don't think he's starting anymore. Kind of has a goofy last name.
Is it Matt Hasselbeck?
Joe Flacco
from Delaware.
Let's go.
Yep.
I forgot he won the MVP. That guy is so average.
He started his career at Pitt.
He got paid too.
And transferred to Delaware. The other one is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers started his career at a community college and transferred to Cal. Then the third player who transferred was Terrell Davis. Started his career at Long Beach State.
Running back for the Broncos.
Started at Long Beach State and transferred to Georgia. So those 3 guys were transfers. There are 7 other players all time, including Cooper Kupp, who their entire career was at a non-FBS school, which is pretty crazy.
So it's 10 total.
10 total, if you count the transfers. Yep. Kurt Warner, which is way more than I thought. Kurt Warner, his whole career was at Northern Iowa. Jerry Rice, Mississippi Valley State. Doug Williams, Grambling State. Phil Simms, Morehead State. Richard Dent, Tennessee State. And Harvey Martin at East Texas State, which is now D2 Texas A&M Commerce. They changed their name. So pretty crazy. Would not have expected that many guys to be from non-major FBS football programs.
I like that fact. And you said there was out of how many Super Bowl MVPs?
48 total players.
So almost 20%, a little over 20% are non-FBS players.
Which I think is an important fact. Obviously, not everyone who plays college football is going to go to the NFL, but I think it's a really important fact for like kids and young football players and athletes to see that you don't need to be some crazy star in high school or college to have success. I think that's kind of an important.
You also have to
takeaway.
You also have to be very good, and you also have to have a work ethic that is unmatched by 99.9% of the people you're playing against.
Yeah, like Cooper Kupp, even though Cooper Kupp played at Eastern Washington, do you guys realize he's the all division career receiving leader?
Okay, but Cooper Kupp's wife also came out and said, I worked a job to support us in college. Like, no, Mrs. Kupp, you didn't do shit in college that helped support you. You fucking just hung out in an apartment and ate ramen. Like, shut up.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that there's probably some truth. Kory doesn't like Cooper Kupp.
Apparently, Kory thinks he's here.
I don't mind Cooper Kupp. I think his wife is stupid for saying that. Oh, she worked a job to support us. No, Cooper Kupp knew he was going to the league. He was good. Jesus. Anywho.
Well, all right. We're going to wrap.
He was trying to keep her slim, all right?
They were probably fucking like rabbits.
My father-in-law listened to our podcast on the way home from Florida and said, Kory used the F word too much in our podcast.
Really?
Said Kory swears too much. You got to tell him that.
I'll text John, tell him he makes the money.
Well, we're going to segue here into the second portion of the podcast with our guest, CJ Mifsud. I hope you enjoy the conversation. We will be talking with him about a variety of things, including his time playing high school football for his father at Dearborn, in addition to playing college, Division II at Hillsdale, where he was my roommate, actually, and played with his brother, his older brother, Anthony. And then we're going to talk with him as well about his time working for Schutt Sports, his thoughts on kind of helmets and concussions, coaching some high school football as well at Cranbrook Kingswood. And then he's going to talk to you guys about the Get To Foundation. Very special conversation we're going to have. So hope you enjoy it. And that conversation is coming up next. And we're going to go ahead and segue into the second part of the podcast here with our guest for episode 13. Mr. CJ Mifsud. CJ is a 2011 graduate from Dearborn High School, where he was an all-state Division I quarterback, setting his school's single-season passing record. Then he went on to play at Hillsdale College, where he was actually my freshman roommate. Feel very sorry for him. We'll talk about that a little bit later. He went on to work at Schutt Sports, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, in 2016, and he spent a couple years coaching football at Cranbrook Kingswood as the quarterback's coach. We had Uday on recently, who coaches there now as well. CJ, how you doing, man?
Fantastic. Happy to be here. Appreciate you guys having me on.
We love having Hillsdale guests on. I just said before we started recording,
we're on a bender.
We're on a bender here with a lot of Hillsdale guests. Go Chargers, baby.
We're reliable.
We are. I will say we haven't had a Hillsdale guest bail on us yet, so I guess that's a positive. We're, I don't know what, 4 for 4 or 5 for 5 or whatever it is now. So CJ, going to kind of open things up here with your high school days. You played at a fairly good sized high school, one that I was actually looking up today. Dearborn has just grown and grown and grown. And at this point, they have like over 2,000 students in the high school now. I think they're one of the bigger high schools, maybe not necessarily in the state, but a good sized high school, obviously Division I. And you had the interesting, distinction of playing for your dad. He was the varsity head coach for over a decade at Dearborn.
Yeah. Close to 15 years, I believe, 15 or 16. Yeah.
With 2 or 3 semifinal appearances. Your dad won quite a few games as the head coach.
Yeah, 2 semifinal appearances. My brother was actually on the team for both of those, so that was pretty cool. I was just a little guy running around for those, being the ball boy, but yeah, pretty cool.
What was that like playing for your dad? I mean, I know Brett and Kory, I think, did too. In youth football, we played for our dads, but varsity football is a far different level to play for your father than at the youth level.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting and a unique situation. But like I said, being a little kid growing up around it, it's kind of always my dream to play varsity football at Dearborn High. So pretty cool that I got to be able to do that and was able to be the quarterback on the varsity team for 2 years. Different kind of pressure there, especially when I was a junior and probably wasn't as good. I wasn't like far and away the starter and all that, but yeah, it was a different type of pressure, especially with an older brother who had a lot of success in the same position. So yeah, that was, but had a little bit of a struggle on my junior year, probably a little too much pressure on myself, but yeah, it was good. It kind of motivated me to work over the summer between our junior and senior year, and ended up having a pretty good senior year, and it led me into opportunities beyond high school. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, some of the funny things, like people always ask me like, well, what'd you call him at practice, dad or coach? And my answer is always like, I didn't call him anything. I made it all that time and without ever having to like specifically address him in any way. So
no pronouns.
Yeah.
Did you was he your position coach or what? Because my dad coached the defense on the varsity when I was on varsity, but obviously I didn't play linebacker, so I never had to address him either, and that was only for a season or two. But
Kory was
he
a
your
DB.
position coach? Yeah. Was he your position coach, or what position did he coach?
He called the plays on offense, so he's running the show in that way. But no, I worked with a different quarterback coach just in like the individual parts of practice and off-season stuff. I did have a different quarterback coach that I worked with, so there was a little bit of relief there. But when it comes to calling plays, he's running the show. I got my fair share of chew outs on the sideline and all that. There's actually he likes to tell the story, so I don't mind telling it, but there was a game my senior year. We were playing Belleville, and on the first possession, I just stupid and like threw a bad interception, and I came over to the sideline, and he was like really giving it to me, like really giving it to me, and his one coach was up in the press box on his headset, was like telling him like, all right, I think he gets it. And my dad's like, no, he doesn't. Like, and he keeps going. And then this is all going on right in front of the cheerleaders. And a couple of them started to cry because he was yelling at me so much. But the good part of that story is I ended up having a great game after that, beyond that first possession. So maybe that was just the type of coaching I needed.
Did you ever go rogue on him since he called the plays? Were you ever just like, screw it, I'm just out here, I'm just going to run whatever I want to run?
There was a couple times when I was a junior, we were running this like double wing ace back offense where we were sending one of the wing backs in motion and hand it on a jet sweep. Like that, we ran that was like bread and butter play. We'd run that and then a trap off of it to the ace back as well. But my center would always say like, these linebackers are just like completely vacating the middle of the field. Like you just quarterback sneak it. So there was two times and he would tell me all the time and I would ignore him just because I got to run the play that's called. But there was two times. Once was like a fourth down from the 12-yard line. And I snuck it and I got into the end zone. And then another time was, I don't know why they happened to both be on fourth down, but it was a fourth down from like the 20-yard line and I snuck it and it scored a touchdown. But I remember
the center was right.
He was right. And, so sometimes you got to trust your guys. But both times I remember my dad saying like he didn't even know what happened. Like he was watching like the different blocking, or he was watching one of the backs or something. And then all of a sudden it was like, touchdown. So, but no, not often going rogue. He knows what he's doing, so I trust him along the place.
So you kind of like growing up with your dad being the head coach for a while, you're probably always mentally prepped for that time, the impending time you would spend on varsity with your dad coaching you. So it was probably never like oh shoot, like my dad's going to be my coach. Like you just were always like, yeah, my dad's going to be my coach. So it was never like an intimidating, maybe a little bit of intimidation, like you said, with following in the footsteps of your brother who also had success in the same position. And your dad had gone to semifinals, before you got up to varsity. There's probably a little bit of pressure, but it wasn't like a fear of like, I got to play for my dad and worry about, some weird dynamic here with my dad as my coach.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't, it was a little more normalized and expected. He coached like my travel basketball when I was in elementary and middle school. So I had a little bit of a dose of that there. He also actually coached my freshman basketball team. So just, I had all sorts of coaching throughout my life. It just, I guess on a little bit bigger of a stage when it came to varsity football.
What was your favorite part about getting to have your dad as your varsity coach?
My favorite part? I don't know, man. Like I guess it was almost easier to trust him with the play calls and all that. Like that, there was no way I was ever going to second guess anything, so it makes it easier because I can just focus on my job. There are times where, there wasn't a lot of times when practice came home, we were able to come home and have dinner and not necessarily talk about football. So that was a pretty, and I think he did a great job of it with both my brother and myself of kind of leaving that, we had plenty of time at practice and whatnot, and able to come home and just have a regular dinner conversation. But certainly times when we had to go watch film afterwards. But I think for the most part, did a pretty good job of separating that.
So another interesting aspect, obviously, getting to play for your dad, is not unique to Dearborn, but there's something about playing at Dearborn that is pretty unique to that area. And that's, with having a very heavy Muslim population in Dearborn, you had your dad, I guess, for a long time would have had the challenge of working around Ramadan and, players kind of fasting. And I know you and I've talked about it before, but would you like to kind of, share a little bit with what that unique challenge was like playing for a high school football team that had so many players that had to dedicate that part of themselves to something outside of football and then, find a way to rectify it with the sport at the same time?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, at Dearborn, there's a mix of that culture. And at Dearborn Fortson, I know is a majority Muslim population, so they almost don't have the same type of mix where you have to kind of balance it. But it's interesting, and I commend that culture because the way the holiday works, it moves throughout the year. It's not always in December or in a month and a year. So I remember growing up, like Ramadan would take place in the winter. And side note, the days are much shorter in the winter, and when they have to fast. So it's incredible what they do. But then as I got into high school, that's when Ramadan started coming in into the fall. So when I was a junior, I remember the first few games fell into the Ramadan season. And I remember specifically my teammates breaking fast at halftime of our games where they hadn't had, food or water all day. And then they're trying to somehow they start the game, and then they have to control themselves when they do break fast at halftime. You can't stuff your face in the middle of a football game, so they're able to balance that. And then the way it works into my senior year in the summer, it fell during what our camp period would be. So what we did was we ended up starting. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine. But we started our two-a-days at 8 or 9 p.m., so that way they were able to break their fast before practice started, because there's a lot of work to do during those times, as you guys know. You can't hold back. So in order to optimize it as best as possible, we would start later, and we were ending at midnight, 1 a.m. But just willing to make that adjustment for our teammates that are making that sacrifice, I think was something we definitely had to do.
At least you got to dodge the summer heat in the middle of the day. That must have been really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. That was huge. A little bit cooler at nighttime. It was tough though, because imagine sitting around all day waiting for practice like that.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
A lot of Xbox while your parents aren't home.
Right. Yeah. So definitely a unique situation though. Not something not every school and every community has to deal with, but with those unique opportunities, it kind of presents itself to come up with some unique ideas like that. Like not a lot of people practice football at midnight in high school, but so it's kind of cool that way.
I think it's neat being a public school too. I mean, it'd be one thing if it was a private school that the whole school pretty much practiced that religion, but being a public school that they honored that most of their players were practicing that religion, that it's nice that the practice was adapted to that time. So how long is the Ramadan period? Is it 2 weeks or is it just 1 week?
I don't want to misspeak, but I think it's 30 or 40 days.
It's that long.
Yeah. It is a longer period. I know there's been some stories over the years of like some college and NFL guys going through some similar type stuff. But, I don't know exactly the time period, and I don't want to misspeak on that.
I got to ask you. So I went to school with Rabia Beydoun. I'm sure you know him. He went to Dearborn Fordson. He'd always talk about the Dearborn Fordson rivalry. I don't know if maybe you could talk about that briefly. Is it competitive? I don't know a ton about it. But is it like a competitive rivalry or is it more one-sided than the other?
Historically, I don't know what the overall record is. I can give a little bit of history just based on when I was around. I know that just based on the conference alignments, they didn't play a ton leading up to like 2004. And it had been several years since Dearborn had beat Fordson in football in that time. And then, but they hadn't played in a few years. So it was like a big deal and a big game. And I remember in 2004, and then Dearborn won that game in the next couple of years, then like lost 3 years in a row. And then we beat them in the regular season when I was a senior and lost to them in the playoffs that same year. And then I think it's been kind of back and forth since then. This past year, I actually went to the game and Fordson was highly ranked and Dearborn kind of pulled off an upset. But yeah, it's funny you mentioned Rabia. I do know him well. He's a good guy. And we actually we shared the like Dearborn Player of the Year title our senior years.
Okay.
So we were both co-winners of that award. But yeah, it's a crosstown rivalry. A couple big schools, big communities.
Yeah, both big high schools. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that just draws in a big crowd and just it kind of gets built up even more. But yeah, I would say for the most part, don't like each other very much on a wide basis. But I do like Rabia in particular is a good guy, and I do like him.
For sure.
It's a good rivalry. It's always good to have that big high school rivalry like that.
Gotta love high school rivalries. I know Vince loves high school rivalries. I'll talk to you all day about it.
I'll talk high school trivia, stupid facts in my brain. I'll talk about all day. Speaking of trivia and fun facts with Dearborn Fordson, I was actually looking at this today and mentioning like the school enrollment and size. Your dad would probably have an interesting perspective on this, but I wonder how it affected football. Dearborn had less than 1,000 kids at the start of the 1990s. They now have over 2,000. And even just in his time there, they were growing 100 or 200 kids almost every year. I mean, by your senior year, they were over 1,700. And I would be curious to know how that kind of affected football, if having more and more guys as the community kind of grew, or if you and your family noticed the community growing. I mean, Fordson almost had 3,000 students a couple years ago.
Yeah,
so
they're
both
huge.
those schools are enormous.
Yeah, it's been growing rapidly ever since I graduated. But I know in particular, so my sophomore year there, we were a Division II playoff team, and then when I was a senior, we were a Division I playoff team. So it's a pretty big change jumping from divisions there, where every year before that you're Division II and those teams, and then all of a sudden you make the jump to Division I. But that's history now, where they're always a Division I team now. But yeah, I know it's like, and I know you guys know this, kind of as you get better too, that more kids come out for the team. So I know there were years there where, it's like 60 guys coming out for the varsity football team, and it's tough to find a spot for every guy. But yeah, definitely see that effect. But I think with the growing and with the kind of establishing yourself as a solid football program gets a lot of guys coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because your community is growing, you're having more students in the school doesn't always necessarily translate to like, oh, you're getting better athletes. But it is nice, to get more kids out on the team. Like having 60 kids is a good problem to have. I mean, we're experiencing this in Grand Ledge right now for personal anecdote, and even in the Lansing area with teams bagging freshmen and JV teams left and right just because there's not enough guys to fill out your whole program. So, having too many guys to me is a great problem to have. Whether they're quality athletes, is another story. So, well, do you guys have anything else you want to add here with Dearborn? Otherwise, we're going to talk with him about Hillsdale a little bit.
Good.
So CJ signed a letter of intent to go to Hillsdale College, was blessed to have me as his freshman roommate in 2011. Obviously, your brother Anthony, played at Hillsdale 3 years older, right? I believe he's 3 years older than us, right? So he had been there for a few seasons before you got there. Was he the primary reason for you to choose Hillsdale, or was there some other factors that ended up determining that as your destination to play college football?
Yeah, so my both my parents went to Hillsdale, and my dad played football at Hillsdale, was on the 1985 national championship team. I had an uncle that played football there as well. And and then with my brother going there, and shortly followed by me entering that recruiting process, it was almost like people thought it was a foregone conclusion that I was also going to Hillsdale. So I almost resented that and was like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go somewhere else and, make my own footsteps, not follow. So that's kind of how it started. And once a season ended and you kind of start that recruiting circuit, it was clear that the GLIAC was where my talent level fell. And so I was getting recruited by those schools and did go on a visit to Hillsdale. And man, it was just
resentfully so.
Well, I had to. I had to. I respect everybody that recruited me. I don't know that I was very humbled by it all. I was like, I don't know why you guys want me to come play football for you, but I'm absolutely going to take you up on your offer to come for a visit and a workout. So did that, and it's just a different type of place. It was like we've talked about, coming from a pretty big high school and a bigger community. It was different in that, small town, small school, that kind of close knit community feel. That was something that was very attractive to me, and just meeting the people that I met, and they're just the type of people that I wanted to spend my time with, wanted to spend my college career with. So in the end, it wasn't that difficult of a decision after I got over myself and was like, all right, just because I'm doing something doesn't mean I'm doing it for other reasons. I have my own reasons. So pretty easy decision when it came down to it.
If you would have known, Vince would have been sitting in your dorm room, twisting his leg hair, eating tuna. Eating tuna. Would you change your mind in 2022?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I told them how
you're supposed to ask that off air, Kory.
I told them how they know I'm a big fan of tuna, and then I told them how you more than once walked into the room and you're like, oh, you're making fucking tuna, aren't you? And you just turn around and walked out.
I'd be sitting there and you would open the can of tuna and you're draining it in the sink, and I was just like, man.
All the cats on campus come running, and Vince is just sitting there in his underwear.
Well, before we embarrass me too much here, what obviously with your brother being 3 years older than you guys went to the same high school, but that's at that age in high school, you're kind of too far removed to have that experience. I would assume you guys, if you were a freshman, he was a senior, right?
Yeah.
at Dearborn, so it's not like you guys got to play with each other in high school, really. But in college, it was a little bit different. You guys got to be together on the same team for 2 years. Was that when you were signing and deciding, Hillsdale, obviously you had lots of other family who went there as well, a lot of ties, but with your brother being on the team, was that a big determining factor? And then what was, for you personally, what was that like getting to finally be able to play with your older brother for a couple of years?
Yeah, at the time, I didn't realize how unique and how great of an opportunity it was to be on the same team as my brother for 2 seasons. That, like, when he was graduating and looking back on it, I was so blessed and so lucky with that opportunity. Not a lot of people get to do that, and so just looking back, I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was there. It was definitely an attractive factor for sure, to, get to work out with him, knowing we had this working towards the same thing, and he could help me out. Always having a throwing partner in the summers. But yeah, that was great. I mean, once I signed and we started, and then we came home for the summer before my freshman year, he started like showing me the ropes, showing me the workouts, teaching me a little bit, before we started. There's a little bit of an advantage there. Didn't help a ton, as it turns out, but it was nice. But yeah, I just really lucky to be there. Him being the starter for the 2 years that we were there together, and me getting a sideline view of that. Pretty lucky, pretty unique, and I'm very thankful for that. But to your question, I did not realize how lucky I was at the time. But looking back, man, it was a really good decision and really cool for me.
I know your brother Anthony, so I'm sure. I mean, this question I feel like is an obvious one, but I figure I should ask it. Do you remember when you committed? Was Anthony pretty excited about you? Be like, yeah, CJ's going to come and be a part of the team too. Do you remember what that moment was kind of like with your brother finding out that you were going to be there too?
So this is kind of I have a long answer for you, and it ties back to what we talked about earlier. So when I visited Hillsdale, I had a few weeks after, I had a conversation with Coach Otter, and he asked me to walk on, and I was like, okay, like that. I really like the place, and but I'm getting scholarship offers from other schools in the same conference, so I think I'm gonna focus on those with keeping that in my mind. I really like Hillsdale. I'd absolutely be happy going there. And then getting closer to signing day, I hadn't really made a decision. I had offers from I had narrowed it down to Wayne State, Saginaw, and Tiffin. And getting closer to signing day, I got a text from my brother, and he was like, "Hey man, are you coming to Hillsdale?" And I was like, "You mean this weekend, to visit and hang out or something?" and then so behind the scenes, he was like, "Oh shit." And I texted Steve-O, who's the recruiting guy for our area. And then Steve called me, and they had worked out a scholarship opportunity for me. And so he kind of broke the news before I even knew. And then so I was able to take that into consideration with my other things, and then make a decision and commit to Hillsdale. So it was funny the way that worked out, because he was excited, and he knew before me.
That's great. I love that. I don't know if I ever knew that.
It's a good story.
I don't think I ever knew that. That's awesome. You guys have anything else you want to ask CJ about Hillsdale? Otherwise, we'll move on to a couple more topics here.
Yeah, man.
Cranbrook Kingswood. So we actually had Uday on, a teammate of ours, a few weeks ago. We had him and Chance Stewart on to talk kind of the different perspectives on public school and private school coaching. So you got to coach a couple of years, I believe 2019 and 2020 seasons at Cranbrook Kingswood. To my knowledge, just as a position coach, right? Did you help call the offense, or did you just do quarterbacks?
I was the offensive coordinator both seasons. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. For some reason, I thought you did more than just coach the quarterbacks. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about Ben Jones a little bit later here in the Get To Foundation. But to my knowledge, Ben was really one of the reasons you ended up going there and coaching, right? Or was there another draw to coach at Cranbrook Kingswood?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to say Uday is a fantastic coach and absolutely the kind of guy you want around your program and around your high school kids. He is
love Uday.
Fantastic. And I was lucky enough to get to be on the staff with him for a season. That was fantastic. But yeah, back to your question. Yeah, so Ben had coached at Cranbrook for several years, and I always knew, because we were very close friends, and always knew, and he would ask me like every summer, like, "Hey man, you want to come help with the JV team?" And I was just like young and dumb and doing my own thing, and like, no, like I don't want to do that, And then he calls me it was June, and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about coaching this year." And I had gotten the same phone call like this prior 2 years, so I was, almost expected. He was like, "It's a little different this time. I just was hired as the head coach on the varsity team, and I want you to come call the plays for me." And I was like, "Whoa, like it's a big deal," and it kind of changed things. And it was late to the game, June. Like it's June, and you're in. They had kind of a snafu with the head coach, and were without a coach when school was ending, and were having their your 1 week camp that you have when school ends. That was like 2 days after he was hired as the head coach, so we were a little late to the game. But we sat down, had a long conversation about his goals and his visions for everything, and how I could fit into that, and how we could work it out. I have a regular 9-to-5 job, so figuring out a way to get to practice on time and being there for long enough and every day. So we figured all that out, and I signed on full time. We were off and running in June. Had a lot of work to do that summer, and had a really good group of kids, and wanted to be sure we were giving them the season they deserved. Really good group of seniors that had a lot of success in their career, and wanted to make sure we sent them out on the right note. But yeah, that's ultimately what brought me to Cranbrook, and it was a pretty special experience, and I'm pretty lucky to be involved in that.
How nervous were you before your first game, never having any prior coaching experience?
Yeah, crazy. Like I had, I had game planned and all that in college, but calling the plays, it was very nerve wracking because
it's a good season too. You guys made the playoffs that year.
Yeah, we were, like I said, great group of kids, and we did everything we can to give them the season that they deserve. But yeah, it's a little different, calling the plays. It's out of your control. Like the result, you can call the play, but making the read and all that, it's out of your control. You just have to stand there and watch. You guys know this. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking for sure, being a first-time coach and calling plays. They're definitely a learning curve. I'm not afraid to admit it, that it was around the middle of the fourth game when I finally, some stuff started to click for me. It was different. Like, high school football is so different than college, where, in college, I feel like you have one play and you get the right situation and that play works and you, have to move on. Where in high school, if a play works once, it's probably going to work again. So it doesn't mean you can't call it again. And just the different types of adjustments and all that. But yeah, it's definitely a big learning curve for me. But, I did like being in control of the offense, and, having that responsibility. Definitely got some looks from Ben sometimes. I'm like, what are you doing? That kind of thing. He's a big run the damn ball guy, and I was like, Ben, we're not gonna throw it on every first down. That's just not how we're gonna do it. So we definitely bounce some things off each other. But yeah, it was a really good experience.
So are you a booth guy, or are you an on the field guy?
On the field with coach, I coached quarterbacks as well, as Vince mentioned. So I got to be there, in my QB's ear, which that was something about coaching that I really liked. I really liked the individuality of coaching quarterbacks and the technical aspects almost more than the reading defenses and scheming plays and whatnot. So I really like that aspect of coaching as well.
Yeah,
so much varied. I'm sorry, guys.
Well, when it once.
Yeah.
I was just going to say there's so much variable in coaching high school compared to college. Like college, if you get somebody to screw up, it results in a big play and it's a touchdown. In high school, there's 4 or 5 screw ups on every play. So it's just so much different. I don't know. It's fun.
So many X factors with teenagers.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes you just got to get it to your guy, and then he can make something happen. The play doesn't have to be blocked perfectly or anything like that. Doesn't even have to go anywhere near like how you drew it up. But if you get the ball into the right guy's hands, good things can happen.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the having to let go part as very versus playing as a player. Like once you start coaching, like it's such a weird learning curve that like you spend all this time coaching the kids up, and then you hope that once you tell them what to do, that they'll just do it. But at the end of the day, like you don't really know. Like they could just screw it all up, or things might work out nice. But
right.
It's too many crazy variables with teenagers, man. Some of them are coming to practice of their games. They just got broken up with by their girlfriends. So you never know.
And some of them wish they were still with their girlfriend.
Yeah.
Physically.
Well, all right. Anything else you guys want to add here with Cranbrook?
Yeah, I got something to add quick. You said that you mentioned that you work a 9-to-5 job. So that was one hurdle that you had to get over while you were coaching. Is coaching something that you think you'd like to get back into, or does your current career not allow for it? Or I guess what's your stance there?
Yeah. That I definitely have the opportunity with my employment. Just personally, for me, it would have to be a really good situation to walk into. Like Cranbrook was a half hour away from where I lived and where I worked, so it's not only like the time spending at practice, it was getting to and from work. Like my schedule during the season, I was like getting into work at 7, and I was lucky enough that they'd let me leave at like 3:50 to get to practice by 4:30, which was right after warmups ended, and we could. So I'm changing in the car on the highway, like trying to make sure I have my practice plan together, and then getting out of the car and having to go right into our individual period. And then after practice, oftentimes I'd have to go finish up some work, and then have to watch film, which is, you can watch film for as long as you want to watch film for it. There's no designated time period for that. So it was really a grind through the season, in which I love the football aspect of it, but the working part was tough. So like I said, if it was a perfect situation where I lived a little bit closer and I still had the same flexibility of like practice times, like Cranbrook, it was lucky because they kind of operate like on like a college schedule where classes go a little bit later, where if you're at public high school getting out of school at 2:30, I can't, you start practice at 3. I'm not sure I can pull that off. So it would have to be the right opportunity in a perfect fit for me to get back into it. Plus, I got married and there's family time. I got other people relying on me now, so I got to make sure I'm around. I always say, like, before, when I didn't come home for dinner, it was no big thing because I live by myself. But now, other people count on me. So you guys
I get
know
it,
how
man.
that goes. Yeah.
100%. Do you have any kids, CJ, or not yet?
Not yet.
Oh, just wait till you get your first. Vince has 2, so I have 1. She's 5 months old, so I'm learning how that goes.
Yeah, that's a whole different deal.
It is.
Definitely interesting juggling football with kids, that's for sure. I learned that in a crash course this last fall. But we want to also talk to you about, obviously you spent some time coaching, but you also had a very interesting year working for Schutt Sports. Anyone who is involved at any level of the sport of football would probably recognize the name Schutt as being on the back of a helmet. Most popularly, they make, they do things other than helmets, but helmets is probably one of their most recognizable products, I would say. I'm no expert on their company, but I would imagine that's probably one of the things that people know them for the most. Why did you end up at Schutt I know you weren't there for all of 2016, but a decent amount of time you spent in 2016 working for that company?
Yeah, I had a good connection to get into an interview there, and it's selling football equipment. What do I know best at that point in my life, if not football? So it was a good opportunity. It was good. was a good job right out of college, and it was a good opportunity to stay, involved in the game just in a different manner than I was before. So that's ultimately what got me into it. But you mentioned their well-known products. Fun fact is the bases in baseball, MLB baseball, also made by Schutt. So that's a fun fact there.
I was trying to remember because I felt like I had seen their name someplace else really recognizable. Now that you say, I'm like, that's right. I do remember like that being like embroidered or like noticeable on bases in baseball. I was like, I knew it was somewhere else kind of weird. I thought it was like not related to football. So that's interesting. Your time spent there, did you enjoy working at Schutt? Was that kind of an interesting job? I have no idea what that would be like. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to hear your time there. Like what were you doing and how was that experience?
Yeah, it was absolutely an interesting job, and I learned a ton. I didn't know a lot going into it, about the industry itself. Because like you said, they sell other equipment. I personally sold like baseball equipment and then lacrosse helmets as well, on top of football helmets and equipment. But overall, the bread and butter is the football helmets. They're a football helmet company that sells other stuff as well. So I learned a ton about that, about the industry. There's really Schutt and Rydell are the two big ones. There's Zenith and there was Rawlings at the time. I think they're kind of phased out. And then now with Visus entering the picture. So really not a lot of different companies that do that because of the liability. It's a tough business to get into. And it's kind of a crazy industry where every day there's new technology and new enhancements that come out. So that's why you're seeing new versions of helmets come out every year, and then you see guys wearing different helmets on the field every year. So it's just kind of a fast-paced moving industry, and just kind of crazy with all the technology. And then plus, in the recent 10 years or so, the emphasis on player safety and all that has come into play.
Well, you were there. Were you? Well, I guess first off, I'm an engineer. Someone asked an engineer-related question.
Hope I have an answer.
Were you able to see any of like the testing facilities where they test the helmets for impact and strength and just for overall quality?
I didn't go to. I didn't witness any like live tests. I saw like the machines that Schutt would test their helmets on, but all of that, like it's NOXI, and then NFL has their own testing thing that they all do it independently. So it's a different facility, and I think that again has something to do with the liability, where Schutt has their own tests that they do, but like to be certified the way they're certified, it has to be an independent test. But seeing the facilities where things are made and all that was really interesting. And I saw plenty of videos of the helmets being tested, so I saw a little bit of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that Schutt doesn't want to hold that liability. We'll test our standards and you can test to your own standard, and we'll certainly provide you a quality helmet. But I don't want to get too far out of the way, but I'm going to ask this question anyways. So obviously you had mentioned in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of talk relative to concussions. And over the past 10 years too, this is just a little bit of factual data. So I guess it's only the last 6 years, but in 2015, since they started taking data on this in the NFL, there was 275 concussions. And this past season, granted, there was an extra week of playing games in the regular season in the NFL. There was 187 concussions. So there was reduced by nearly 100 concussions in a season in over 6 years. A lot of that might be relative to the engineering of the helmet, but also the targeting rule. And I wanted to open up the floor here, and maybe we can talk about the current targeting rule and if we think it's hindering sports. And I guess maybe I'll ask you first, CJ, what's your opinion on the current targeting rule?
So I'll touch on the helmet development a little bit as well before I get into that. So my personal belief is that the rules and the techniques of tackling changing, I think that has a higher impact than like the technology that's being put into helmets. There's no way to prevent a concussion. No helmet is going to prevent a concussion, no matter how well it fits you, no matter the technology that's inside of it. It's it doesn't have to do with that, and they don't know what causes concussions, or else, they would have a little bit more of a solution for it. But so no helmet you put on your head is going to prevent you from getting a concussion. The better it fits you, the better technology that's in those will help, but nothing can 100% without a doubt prevent it. So my beliefs are that with the rule changes and the techniques of tackling changes, that will lead that I think that's what's led to those statistics that you said, more than just the technology. Of course, it's a combination of the two. But now to get into the targeting rule, I agree there should be a personal foul rule, helmet to helmet rule. But man, kicking a kid out of the game, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get behind that. That is, and making a kid sit out the next game just because he made the infraction in the second half. I'll never get behind that. You can argue what's a penalty and what's not all day, but man, 15 yards is a heck of a lot different than a half of a football game.
Go ahead, Vince.
No, the only thing I was going to add is I don't think there's any other sport where a rule exists, a rule's in place to eject a player for just making a play. Any other sport where an ejection exists tends to go past making a play in that
like
sport.
Malicious intent.
Yeah, like you punched somebody, like you touched a ref, you went into the stands, right? You did something that's outside the boundaries of the game. The targeting rule to me is the only one I can think of that exists for you making a play. You're just playing the game and you get ejected, which is ridiculous.
You mentioned punching. So are you saying that in football, we need to have a penalty box like in hockey for people that have targeting, and they need to sit in there for like a big plastic box for like 10 minutes?
No, but I think the NFL does a very good job of, like, now, granted, in high school, in college level, they already review it. But in like the pros, they review it, and then majority of the time it's overturned. Same should be in college, and it shouldn't be an ejection, though. It should just be
a penalty,
a 15-yard penalty, and don't be a jackass and hit somebody in the head. But I just wanted to branch off of what CJ said. Concussions will forever be a thing regardless of helmets, because a concussion is when your brain bounces off your skull, and just basic physics that's going to happen regardless if you're wearing a helmet or not. So,
yeah, you can't completely 100% prevent it. I mean,
you can't. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's still going to hit your skull. It's physics. When something hits something else really fast, your brain is going to keep moving and hit the side of your head. It's going
the only thing the helmet is going to do is maybe dampen the amount of force going through there and the way the force is distributed. So severe concussion might turn into like a more light concussion, but ultimately it's still a concussion.
Yeah. Well, it kind of CJ mentioned it, and the biggest thing I feel like you'll find looking up statistics and stuff is it reduces the risk, right? It's like, with anything in this world, there's things that reduce your risk of something happening. A helmet reduces your risk of getting concussion. When you get into a car, wearing a seatbelt, doesn't necessarily prevent you from being hurt in a car accident, but it reduces the risk, right? That's kind of the idea, is it's prevention, not 100% preventative, I think, is the distinction. Because I think it is important, CJ, that you brought up kind of the emphasis that coaches have had to kind of work around this rule. In an earlier episode of our podcast that we did not that long ago, I brought up how there's this statistic in Michigan that came out from the 2021 high school football season that I can't remember the exact percentage, but they said something like the total number of high school football players that played this past year, it was like less than 5% recorded or reported a concussion of the total football players, which they said was like a huge reduction from maybe it was like 10 years ago or something like that. I know within our football program, we had, something like 80 total kids in our whole program, freshman, JV, varsity. We had one player the entire season get a concussion, and it was the last play of the season in our playoff game. Smacked his head our running back hit his head on the ground when he got tackled. Only concussion of the whole year for our whole program. So I feel like the emphasis on tackling smartly, coaches being aware and players being aware, hey, you can't lower your helmet. You can't lower your helmet into another player's helmet. You have to see what you're hitting. You got to use your shoulder. You got to get chest on chest, right? I think that's very important.
I think part of it too is like an adjustment with, you don't need to go full pads, full contact every single day in practice. So you're seeing a lot less of that too, and you're still able to perform at a high level at come game time. So I think you're seeing that that's kind of trickled down from the higher levels, but I think that's definitely had an impact on those numbers as well.
And especially when you're seeing these like recorded concussions in games or practices or whatever, you got to think there's a lot of concussions that go untouched, untalked about. I mean, just think about when you're seeing when you receive a concussion, not everyone is like probably mid-grade to like high level where it's actually affecting like motor function, vision, and those types of things. So, I mean, unfortunately, football is a violent sport, and most football players probably experience concussions to a very minor extent regularly. I mean, it's probably on like a day-to-day. Like very, very minor.
Well, I know for a very long time what was the terminology? You got your bell rung.
Yeah.
I know that was like for a long time. It was like, oh yeah, I got my bell rung.
It's called the concussion.
Yeah, you're concussed, man. I love hearing stories from like, people a lot older than us who played in like the 90s or the 80s or even earlier. Like, yeah, I blacked out for that whole play. I just got my bell rung. I went right back in there. I'm like, you probably have CTE, man. Like, you probably should have taken a week off from football. But I mean, it's crazy the progress we've made. I mean, from decades ago, but even just in the last 10 years, a lot of things have changed. That's for sure.
It happens in all aspects of life. I mean, there's always change. 10 years from now, we'll be talking about something else. I think, to be honest with you, I think 10 years from now, we'll be talking about how field turf is increasing ACL injuries. That's a whole nother story, though. Just ask Odell about that.
And cancer.
And cancer. I was just going to say, cancer. What about swallowing all the rubber beads?
That one's proven, though, which is terrifying.
I'm sure all of us swallowed quite a bit of those playing high school and college football. I mean, we played.
They made me gag so bad when they'd get like stuck in your mouth guard or like in your lip, and you just like,
picking them out of your mouth guard was the worst. You got to get a water bottle and spray your mouth guard out on the sideline. Yeah.
Oh.
You guys have anything else here we want to add on concussions or the targeting rule before we get to our kind of last topic to wrap it up?
Yeah, I have my proposed rule for targeting. So last year in the NFL, there was 174 targeting fouls. 99 of those targeting fouls came in the second half. So
that was in the NFL?
Yeah.
The NFL?
Nope, sorry, NCAA Division I football. 174 targeting calls, 99 in the second half. That's 99 guys that are missing the start of the next game, which is just a shame, especially for the college guys. I mean, you're only given 4 years on the field. So my proposal for the targeting rule would be, I think a 15-yard penalty. I mean, that's essentially what it used to be. I think a 15-yard penalty is fine, but I think the guy should maybe sit out the rest of that possession. I think that's, if you just have a 15-yard penalty, there's going to be guys that don't give a shit and they're just going to hit somebody as hard as they can because it's only 15 yards. I think that a lot of it should be circumstantial on where they're at in the game too. I think if the game is a little out of reach, like the one team is up 21 points and they just decide they're going to start cheap shotting people, that maybe that should bring on suspension to start the next game. But I think we are all in agreement that having to sit out after one hit, having to sit out the next game when you're just trying to make an honest tackle is certainly not in favor of the players. And I don't think you're preventing any concussions that way either, because chances are if a guy got nagged with the targeting call, he's probably not going to get hit with targeting later that game because he's going to be so self-conscious about hitting someone in the head again.
Well, and I remember we all watched the bowl games pretty heavily this season. There was a bowl game, at least one I remember, where a guy got a targeting call at the beginning of his second half of a bowl game. And he was a senior. I'm like, that's how this dude's career just ended. If he's not playing in the NFL, that's it. That's his college, his football career done because of this stupid rule that was made by people who have never played the game of football. That's the other thing that drives me nuts about this rule is it's a rule that's clearly made by people who don't understand the game of football. It's people involved with the sport but have likely never set foot, with pads on and a helmet and had to try and tackle somebody. And I agree that, we don't want players doing this, but again, to eject them. I like the idea, some of the ideas you're saying there, Brett, but I wonder even go a little bit further and do like how basketball does, like with a flagrant 1, flagrant 2 type deal. Maybe not that exact terminology, but like a level 1, level 2 kind of infraction. Like if some guy is straight up spearing another dude in the head, like maybe
just do 2 of them,
or
2 and you're out.
Do 2 and you're done type deal. That's not a bad call either. Like you got, you get 1, it's like a 15-yard penalty, and then if you get another one, you're done. You're out of the game. That would make more sense to me.
Yeah, they do that with other unsportsmanlike penalties, so you could kind of bucket that in.
Yeah,
it's true.
That's true. So I feel like that would definitely be a better situation that I think people would be on board with, because I feel like the rule now, people are very frustrated with it across the board. That's for sure, especially because I don't know if do you guys remember, wasn't it our freshman year at college they instituted the rule? It was like 2011 or 2013 maybe, because it was like every 2 years.
2012 was ringing a bell.
12? Was it 12?
I'll fact check it.
I never got called for any. I never got called for targeting.
I never did, dude. If it was a rule when I was in high school, I would have been called for it a lot. I probably shouldn't laugh and joke about that, but I was brought up by my dad coaching me, talk about old school, coaching me to use my armor. He told me to use my armor to hit people. I was supposed to use my helmet and shoulder pads to hit people. And looking back, that's pretty dangerous. But
Vince is going to receive a letter from the MHSAA suspending him for like 2.5 seasons of coaching.
Retroactively from his playing days.
For something I did 12, 13 years ago. Hopefully not. But yeah, I would have gotten in trouble.
The targeting rule was implemented in the NFL in 2008 and it had a trickle down effect. But
it was in the NFL in 2008?
2008.
Really? Wow.
But to answer your point, Vince, your face masks by mid-season were absolutely trashed.
The helmet's back there. It's pretty messed up. It's not pretty.
Yeah, there's a reason why you broke your nose, because your helmet was sliding over your nose.
Yeah, it was rough. No bueno there. Right, you guys have anything else you want to add here with targeting concussions? Otherwise, we're going to get to our final topic here.
I have one more thing, and I'm curious what you guys think about it. It's I alluded to it earlier, and I'm out of the game. I in no way represent Schutt Sports, and all of my opinions are my own. But like I said earlier, with the new development, new technologies, so you're seeing new versions of helmets come out every year, and the NFL and the big Division I football programs have no issue dropping a load of money buying new helmets because of new technology, right? Like it's the same thing with any equipment. New technology comes out, you're going to get it. But the smaller schools, the high school, the smaller, like the Division II, Division III schools, the high schools, and even youth leagues, like when they purchase helmets, it's like all at once, like, okay, we have some money this year to buy helmets, so we're buying this helmet. And then the next year, the guy selling helmets comes in and says, well, we have this latest and greatest helmet. Well, I just bought 40 helmets last year. I can't buy new helmets, So just like, and I know now, like they'll have high school kids like buy their own helmet. So then like the financial part of it is on the kid or the parent. But I know, for instance, there was a helmet that came out, and it was the latest and greatest thing. You saw it in the NFL, you saw it in Division I football, saw it on TV. And so that it has a trickle down into the high schools. So they're buying those helmets. And I saw last year on the list, it was not even allowed in the NFL anymore. So that is like a 3-year change where no big deal in the NFL, but in high school, a 3-year-old helmet is a new one, Mm-hmm. So just curious, like, I don't know what type of stuff you guys run into with that being coaches or anything, but I just wanted to note that just because it's different for high schools than it is for NFL as far as that financial commitment.
I remember when I got to Northwood, we only had probably 10 to 20 like Riddell, the Revo Speeds. And then by the time I was a senior, we actually had a full slate of them with like the internal foam bladder like inside of them. But even by then, like those were like out of date. I mean, by 2015, like the Revo Speed was the best helmet. I mean, I had one, I loved it, but it was out of date by the time I graduated, and it was like the best helmet to have in college.
I think, I don't know. To me, I mean, it's like buying a new car every year. The technology isn't changing that drastically from year to year. If it protected you last year, if the helmet is still structurally sound, it's going to protect you again. So I think part of it is, I think it's a sales pitch. So like, you got to buy this one, you got to buy this one, you got to buy this one. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure those companies have really short warranties on their helmets. Like it's 2 years or something because they want to keep you buying more helmets. But I don't think the technology is getting that better. I mean, over a 5-year-old helmet, yeah, there's probably a big difference, but a 2 or 3-year-old helmet, there's probably not that big of a difference between that helmet and a brand new helmet. And a lot of it too depends on who's wearing it. I mean, if your middle linebacker is wearing it, yeah, that helmet's going to get a lot more use than your punter. So there's a lot of variables that gets to the point where it's hard to trace. But I think it's a crock of shit, kind of, that someone's going to make you buy a new helmet every 2 years. I mean, they're expensive. And what are they now? Like $500, $400 for a helmet?
I'm out of the game, so I don't know. But
no, they're not.
Vince probably know.
Yeah, they're not
$300.
It depends on the brand and the style and things like that. Like I think the helmets that we get, and to kind of touch on what CJ had just mentioned a little bit ago, because I'm not the head varsity coach, but working with the varsity, I work pretty closely with our varsity head coach. I'm kind of aware of some of the things he does with equipment and stuff like that. I know that we are getting new helmets pretty much. This is going to be his 4th season there. When he came in, he got some new helmets. He's basically buying some new helmets every year, not a whole set. He's sending like the oldest ones back in and getting them refurbished. That's kind of a big thing now, is sending the helmets in and having them, it's more affordable to have them refurbished and sent back. And then we'll buy some new ones. If there's some that's like, yeah, we can't use these anymore. They've been used too much, or they're 4 or 5 years old. We're done. But I don't know the exact dates and numbers. But I also, in terms of price, I know not 100% fact, but I'm pretty sure the helmets that we buy are upwards of $200. I'm pretty sure. I know they're not like $400 or $500, but they're expensive. I mean,
you probably have a contract with a specific brand, and I'm sure if you're buying in volume, you get a discount. But if someone's going to go buy a helmet on their own,
they're normally in the threes. I'm pretty sure it's like $300 to $350.
Yeah, it depends on who's selling it to you too, because like you said, Brett, if you're buying them in bulk, you'll get more of a discount. Whereas if you're an individual kid, just buying one helmet is more expensive. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to bring that up, but it's not to say that once a helmet's used, it's sitting on the shelf, for the whole off season. I'm pretty sure every program has to send in their helmets to be reconditioned after every season. So it's not like if you got a crack in it the year before, it's going to sit there and then some other kid's going to get that helmet the next year. They do send them in for reconditioning every year.
Glue it up. Get back out there, Timmy.
Put some duct tape on it.
Crack some skulls, Timmy.
Go get your bell rung, baby. Well, all right. To kind of get into the last topic here, CJ, we usually have our guests plug something at the end, and I know you and I had kind of talked about this already. We're more than happy and excited for you to come on and talk about the Get To Foundation. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. For anyone listening who has no idea what that is, would you like to kind of introduce that and talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you letting me talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart. So like you mentioned, the Get To Foundation was founded in honor of Ben Jones, who was tragically lost in a car accident in August of 2020. And the goal of the foundation is continuing Ben's legacy of inspiring others to consider obligations and obstacles as opportunities, encouraging others to shift their perspective from have to get to. I know there's been days when I'm having a tough day at work, something's going on. I'm kind of throwing myself a pity party. And then I can hear Ben's voice, him jogging out to practice on a hot August day, yelling, get to, we don't have to be at practice. and I feel so lucky that I even have these obstacles in my life. Like I'm blessed to have these obstacles and have these opportunities to, grow from it or learn from it. And so it just kind of snaps me out of it. I'm like, all right, I got to remember how lucky I am. So that's kind of the quick version of the foundation. You can check out more, a lot of cool stuff on the website. It's get2foundation.org, GETTO foundation.org. We have an upcoming event on Saturday, March 19th in Grand Rapids. It's a reverse raffle style. So a ticket will get you in the running for some different raffles and prizes, including a grand prize of $5,000. Ticket also includes dinner and open bar. So, I don't know what else you need to get you there, but that sounds pretty enticing to me. And tickets are on sale now. Again, on the website, you can check that out. And tickets are limited, so don't wait to buy them if you're interested. And then just donations are always accepted outside of that on the website, and it helps the foundation reach its goals of providing scholarships and grants to those who need it and deserve it.
Brett and Kory, Grand Rapids area, baby. Sounds like a good time to me.
You said the 19th?
Yep, Saturday the 19th starts at 5. We'll go to about 10:30 p.m.
What did you say the website was, CJ?
It's get2foundation.org.
Oh, Get to Foundation. Okay.
And if you're listening, I will have, if you're watching the video version of the podcast on YouTube, in the description box, I will have the website linked. If you're listening on a podcast store and you check the description of the episode, I'll have the website linked there as well. So, and when we share this out on social media, we'll make sure we tag the Get To Twitter page, and I think there's an Instagram page as well. So yeah, I'll tag both those pages when we share it out. So you'll be able to see that there.
Appreciate it. Thanks for letting me give my spiel there.
Absolutely awesome. I know I love when people bring up Ben yelling that out of practice, because one of my favorite practice sucks. I mean, if you play college football, I mean, everyone knows who's played college football that you get out of class, depending on when you have practice or when you have class. But I just remember, for me personally, I get out of class, and especially if it's a hot day, and you're like, shit, I got to go to film. I have to go to film, and then I have to get on my pads, and then you run out of the tunnel. And I'll never, Ben was he wasn't the same age as your brother. He was 1 year younger than your brother. Right? He was 2 years older. Right. So we got to play with him for 3 years. And so for 3 years there, getting to hear Ben, because for anyone listening who didn't know Ben literally did, like CJ said, he would yell this. Like, we're coming out of the tunnel, and he would literally start screaming, get to, we get to practice. He would be yelling that. And I just remember it was an immediate pick me up. Like, I was just like down on myself, like, man, I have to go to practice. And I'm like, all right, Ben's here, have a good time. Shit, I guess we're gonna have a good time, man. So I just, for 3 years that we got to play with Ben, that was always a fun part of practice. Practice isn't always fun, but that was a very memorable part of practice, that's for sure. So Ben was an absolutely great guy. Love that that you guys CJ, I know you're a part of the foundation. I think Tim Hornack is he's the president. Yep. Is the president. Yep. Tim, who we play with as well, is a big part of the foundation as well. So I know there's a lot of guys who were close friends with Ben that are, from Hillsdale, and, Ben was from Muskegon area, and then working in Cranbrook Kingswood, touched a lot of different communities, and knew a lot of people in different areas of the state of Michigan. So very awesome. So have all that information in the description box, again, on the audio and video versions of the episode. So definitely check those out if you're interested in checking that out. CJ, Brett, or Kory, anything else to add here before we wrap things up?
I am good. Thanks for coming on with us, CJ. We appreciate your insight and stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. I had a blast.
Yeah, thanks, CJ.
All right. Thanks for listening along here to our interview with CJ, talking about several different topics of football. We will be wrapping the episode up here shortly, and hope you enjoy it. Hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation with CJ Mifsud of Hillsdale College, Dearborn High School, as well as former Cranbrook Kingswood coach. We'll have that information for the Get To Foundation in the description box on the audio and video versions of the episode. So thank you for listening. Before we wrap things up here for this episode 13, it is my turn finally for the recommendation of the week. I think the recommendation of the week was supposed to be me last week, but because I was gone, I did not get to do it. So Brett, Brett, Kory, and I have all gone once, and then Brett went.
Gone twice.
We've all gone twice. This is your second time.
So this works out. Okay, so I thought one got screwed up because of me being gone. So my recommendation of the week this week is going to kind of jump away from, we've been doing a lot of like breweries and distilleries and kind of alcohol related recommendations. And I'm going to jump into something that's a little bit more personal to me. And that is a movie recommendation. So I'm sure Brett and Kory figured this would be coming eventually. And the movie that I want to recommend is one that just was up for a first ever in Oscar history. This is the first movie in Oscar history to be nominated in the same year for Best Animated Film, Best Documentary, and Best International Film, all in the same year. It's never happened before. And that is the Danish film Flee. Flee as in FLEE, like fleeing a country from danger, which is what this movie is about. If you have a Hulu subscription, this movie is currently streaming on Hulu. And like I just mentioned, it is an animated documentary. It is animated to hide the identity of the people who are being interviewed for the sake of the documentary, for their safety. But it also adds a very, very breathtaking and gorgeous visual aspect to the film. A lot of the animation, all the animation's hand drawn. It's all 2D animation. And it's basically about a man, he is now in his late 30s, who was a child in Afghanistan in the 80s and had to flee when the Taliban took power. And now he had to escape with his family to Russia and then eventually try to get to Europe. It's a very short movie. It's less than 90 minutes when the credits hit. I watched it actually for the second time. I watched it by myself this weekend and watched it with my wife again last night. Very good movie. Again, it's on Hulu. If you don't have Hulu, you should be able to rent it on a VOD store like iTunes or Amazon or the Google store as well. So very good movie. Definitely worth checking out. I'm really hoping it wins Best Animated Feature. I think it's worth your time. If you like documentaries as well, in addition to animated films, definitely a very cool movie. So we'll be back next week. Episode 14 will be coming at you. Not sure what we're going to talk about. Hopefully get another guest on. The problem is now we've kind of hit that time in the season. NFL is officially done. Things are going to be slowing down. So we'll try to mix things up with some different guests and things like that. In the meantime, please check us out on Twitter at GLSF Ball, Instagram, Great Lakes State Football. If you like the video versions of these episodes, please subscribe, Great Lakes State Football. Leave us a like, a comment, share those videos. The audio versions, Apple, Spotify, also Great Lakes State Football. You can find those on all your favorite podcast stores. Thanks for listening. Episode 13, Great Lakes State Football. I'm Vince, Kory, and Brett. Go Green. Go Chargers.
I'm no longer swearing in the episodes. You'll never hear me drop another swear word. So, God damn it, John Maurer, you're gonna make me clean my shit up.